All right, here we go. Let me put the clock over here. We are ready. It is 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we are the POP Baking Club, the practice of pastry. All right, so here's what we're doing. So we are in my kitchen here. This is a residential kitchen that I rent. I've been on TikTok for about 2.5 years. I used to teach baking at the college level, and when COVID hit, I decided to do it here. And not that long ago, I started doing lives. And on these lives, every week, my viewers, you guys, pick a new recipe, and then the following week, I lecture, demo it, and I literally go through everything that I normally would in a lecture in person, and you get to learn with me. And if you miss it, these videos live on YouTube, and I have my notes and ingredient function information on my Substack. This is the practice of pastry, is where you begin at the beginning, and I teach you everything that professional bakers know, and we bridge the gap between the home bakers and the professional bakers, and we break down our recipes into ingredient function. And every single thing that we do, if you keep remembering, is time, temperature, and moisture. And know that even if I sound sciencey or very advanced, what I'm talking about is beginning. It's beginning stuff. And if you watch me enough, if you go back to my playlist, if you start to listen, it actually becomes very repetitive, and you will hear the same things applied over and over and over again. And advanced pastry is just taking the same basic concepts and putting them together and kind of combining them. And I am making today a carrot cake recipe with cream cheese icing. And this is how it works. This is the recipe that lives on my link tree. And I am having this, which is nothing more than a formulator that gives baker's math and batch sizes on my website. So you guys will be able to do this with your own recipes and batch them up and down. This is the carrot cake recipe and the cream cheese icing recipe. And what I did today is I circled how I write my recipes, which is how most baking textbooks do it. I put the ingredients in order that they're used and also in groupings with a space between. So these are the wets and the fats. These are the dries. And then these are the add-ins. And that's how it goes. These are the original amounts right here, because this original recipe was really big. I mean, it was thousands of grams. But I used this center column to bring it down to 25%. So this is 25% of the regular batch, which would be a big sheet pan. So we are doing a quarter sheet tray, and when I put in 25%, it changes all the numbers. And that's what my formulator, which is going to be free to you, unless you want to save your work and all your recipes and build a database of your own recipes using this is what I'm working off of today. But this is the original recipe. So you can take a giant recipe and you can make it small. So this is what we are going to do. If you're using this recipe, it's going to make a quarter sheet tray. And you know, quite frankly, you're going to have to look at the volume if you want to put it into another container to bake it. But what I do is make the amount and then pour it into my container. Whatever I have left, I just do a mini pan. And then on the back, we have our cream cheese icing. So I will get to that second. The next thing I want to show you is that this lives on Substack. This takes me a really long time to do, but I love it. So these are this is this recipe, in fact, because it has the ingredients, the amounts, and the percentages. Over here, I put things like the method, desired outcome, how to evaluate your cake, notes that make this recipe interesting, and then the total outcomes for the combination of cake plus icing. And then I tell you what lives inside the ingredient and then what the ingredient function is. And I do that for that and for the icing. So if you want this information, you have to go to my Substack under the practice of pastry and print it out. So you can have the recipe and all of the ingredient function information to get you through. So today we are doing a carrot cake, and I'm going to get started right away and bring my ingredients over. And what we're going to do is go through one ingredient at a time, talk ingredient function. I'm going to put them together and put them in my oven over there. And you're going to get to do all of this with me. All right, so this is where I work. For those of you who've just joined, I'm going to sanitize this countertop. I'll tell you, wherever I move, I'm going to have to get a white Formica countertop, because that's my whole thing, right? That's like the signature. So I just use a sanitation wipe to sanitize, and I keep this really clean. I use cleaning products throughout, but it's important to pay attention to sanitation when you're working. I'm going to do a quick quick fit check. I'm gonna get a clean apron on and do a quick fit check. Where are my aprons? Here they are. Let me turn you back this way, and I'm gonna get my ingredients are right here. So my fit check's pretty easy because I like to work clean, I like to be convenient, and that means my clothes have to be in tight so that they don't get stuck or caught on anything. I hate these glasses, and I try really hard not to touch them. But I have my hair back, no jewelry, short fingernails, no nail polish, and no jewelry, and my hair back. So that's my fit check, and then I'm ready to go. All right, so I have this recipe. Bring it right here. And the great thing about this recipe, and we are doing a carrot cake recipe today, is that I'm going to be doing it in a bowl. I'm going to be doing it in a bowl, and you don't need to do it on a mixer because it's a quick bread. So if you have a business and you're trying to incorporate little mini muffins or little mini cakes or grab and goes, quick bread is the way to go. Banana bread, zucchini bread, carrot cake, things like that. This one we are going to cut into these beautiful squares, and I actually have one in the freezer. I'm going to show you how to cut it using a hot knife and a ruler, something that if you ever stage or you intern, you're going to do all day long. All right, so let me get my recipe. When I work, I literally print out my recipe, and I know this method, so I don't have it written down. But if you print out this recipe, it's going to say the muffin method, okay? And I'm going to show you what the muffin method is and how it relates to the ingredients that are right in front of me. And the way I use this system is that I scale out all my ingredients using labels and 2 scales. A regular scale for anything up to 20 pounds and a mini scale, which you can get on Amazon, called like a jewelry scale, that's 20 grams and under. So if it's for spices and things like that. If this says 5 grams, it could have been 4.8 grams, and whatever you naturally do, go up or down. I always naturally go up, so I just went up to 5. But those jewelry scales can get you really close. I work in metrics, I work in grams, and I am bad at math, and it is the only math I've ever been good at. Everything is by tens, and that makes it so easy. Metrics are easy, and I laugh because as Americans, anyone out there who's from Europe or Canada or anywhere else, you guys already use metrics, but in the US we don't. In the 70s, I was so excited, I thought we were gonna shift to it, we never did. But the trick is if you're taking Tylenol, you know to take 250 milligrams. If you're getting a liter of Coke, you know what that means. If you're running a 10K, you know what that is. So like as Americans, we kind of pick and choose, but for baking, I think we need a revolution. Everyone needs to buy a scale. They're not expensive and you can get them easily online, and we need to start working in grams. And so that's what I do when I weigh out all my ingredients in these deli cups like this, all in advance. The cold things have been in the refrigerator. I pulled them out this afternoon. Things like my buttermilk and my eggs to come to room temperature. Everything is room temperature, and I scaled everything 2 days ago. So this system is easier. It is not more work. Anything I recommend to you as a professional pastry chef is to make your life easier. The more I look into new baking books, the more I'm finding recipe developers are adding, even if they do it by cups, they add the grams as well. However, for teaspoons and whatnot, I still have to look it all up. So I don't know why they put, you know, a cup of flour for grams, but then not 3/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla. Like, just tell me how many grams it is. It's simple. So here's what we're gonna do. I go through and I use this center column, this is on my link tree, to verify that I have the right amounts, because occasionally, like today I was working on a gluten-free chocolate chip cookie. I didn't have the salt, and I didn't have it, but it was on my list, so I went and got it. And that's why this is a good checks and balance system. Yeah, why are they giving multiple? And then sometimes the conversions are like a stick of butter, 3 ounces of something, and then gram. I'm like, what is going on? It's crazy. I'm using 120 grams of a neutral oil. Neutral means it doesn't have a lot of flavor. So, I mean, if you want to use olive oil, it's going to impart olive oil flavor. This happens to be sunflower, but I like any neutral oil. And you can use canola or whatever you want. This is 120 grams. This is my fat. Oil versus butter, when you put your carrot cake in the refrigerator, keeps it softer. If I were to use butter, it would get firmer in the fridge. But this is going to give me a more tender tooth, which I like in a carrot cake. I like carrot cake cold. I like to eat a lot of things cold. This is my buttermilk. I don't suggest using acidulated milk where you add the lemon juice when a recipe calls for buttermilk. This is cultured. It's completely different than that. And I like the heft. You can even see how it's leaving a ring. And this is low fat. I wish I could find high fat, but that's fine. 134 grams of buttermilk. We need the acid in here to activate the baking soda. And that's very important to me getting leavening, because once I get all these ingredients together, they're heavy. So we're gonna need leavening. And the baking soda is our only chemical leavener in here. Then we have vanilla extract, and you can use vanilla bean paste. This is gonna give a little more liquid, but you can even see this has got lovely color. So this is 12 grams. That is, and I have the percentages on here as well. That's 5%, so that's a really good flavor. And then I have 120 grams of whole egg, which I crack, and you can see they're separated and slightly oxidized. It's not a problem. So for 120 grams of eggs at 50 grams per estimated, I pull 3 eggs, stir them together, and then I scale out 120. And I either reuse the other egg or I figure out another use for it. These are my wets. I have fat, I have egg, I have flavoring, I have buttermilk, dairy, but these are my liquids. I'm gonna put my liquids right here. And then I have AP flour. Oh, you know what? Oh my gosh, see? I never scaled my AP. I accidentally, that is so hilarious. I accidentally scaled butter for some reason, so I'm gonna have to do this really quick. And this is how fast it is when you forget something. And I noticed it, and then I never redid it. I mean, that is not hilarious. So I always find mistakes. 240 grams. You're gonna see how fast this goes. I might only need a medium cup, but I'm gonna get a large. I store all of them back there. They hardly take up any room. I make a habit out of not touching my ingredients. It tends to be a good habit to get into. So I need 240 grams of all-purpose flour, and we're using all-purpose flour because we need some structure with the flour. We need a little bit of structure from the gluten, but we don't need, obviously, bread flour, and we don't want it to be too unstructured like a cake or a pastry. So AP is a nice in-the-middle flour. All right, so there we go. Move these. So I got my AP. All right, there's my AP. 344 grams of sucrose. Isn't that funny that this is 240 and this is 344? Look at that. It's just, and as you learn to scale, you start to know when something looks normal. And that's a secondary way of knowing that you've got everything accurate. So our sucrose is just table sugar. I call it that because that's how I was trained, but it's plain table sugar. And then we have baking soda at 9 grams, and it's lumpy. So that's why you either have to sift or you have to whisk it. And then I have 5 grams of cinnamon, which is actually quite a bit. That's 2% of the total. And I have 5 grams of sea salt, a fine sea salt. And then I have 60 grams of desiccated coconut. Desiccated coconut is unsweetened. Now, if all you have is the sweetened kind from the grocery store, you can use that. But they're long and they have sugar in them. It's going to affect the flavor. Honestly, it doesn't really change the texture ton, but you see how thin? This is unsweetened. Desiccated coconut is actually really useful in this recipe because it's high moisture. And there are 2 things that we can't control the moisture as well as we might like to. One is our pineapple. This is crushed pineapple. And I just did a video I posted before I came on live. And you want to squeeze out a little bit of the moisture, but not all of it. So that's obviously variable. So the desiccated coconut is going to soak up a little bit of that. And then here we have fresh shredded carrot. And I did put this in the freezer. And here's what I recommend doing. We need 200 grams of carrot. I like doing it on the food processor. If you do it on the grater, like the box grater, you're going to express more water. So you might want to put your carrots on a paper towel or soak up a little bit of the water. You don't want them dripping, but their nature is to have water, and the water content's going to be variable. But what you can do is if you end up with extra, you can throw this in the freezer, and then when you're ready to use it, you just throw this in the cooler, your refrigerator, and then bring it to room temp. So you can pre-scale your carrots in batches for your recipe and never waste what you have. I'm going to keep this here. We are going to include the desiccated coconut in the Dries, so that's not going to go through a sifter or a tammy. I'm going to take this right now. I use tape that's for like painting, painter's tape, and I hang it right here so I can see. All right, so I'm going to put my dry ingredients into this bowl, the flour, and I'm going to take right now all of the labels that are from my Dries off, and I'm going to put them together on the countertop. And I do this in my videos, and I'm not joking, I do this every time. So then I take all the lids off and I keep all of the labels. When I make a mistake, I kid you not, I can just retrace my steps. It's ingenious. All right. So into my all-purpose flour is going to go my cinnamon, my desiccated coconut, and now I know I have the right amount. So like, I know the muffin method. I don't have to go back and retrace my steps. And then these are going in my dish bin. Now when I accidentally drop something on the counter, that's why it's good to, I use 2 of these King Arthur scrapers and just clean it up. So when you work with a quick bread, the biggest problem with the quick bread and the biggest mistake people make is that they overmix the batter. Overmixing the batter does not mean when they're dry, and it doesn't mean overmixing the wets. Once you add the flour to the wets, that's go time. That's when it gets overmixed. So what you want to do is pay attention to these ingredients and incorporate them in a way that makes sense to limit the interaction. So by the time we add the liquids to the Dries, we're doing minimal mixing because we've already pre-done a lot of the thinking. So I'm going to mix my Dries using a whisk. This is going to get them to be cohesive, and it's also going to aerate them a tiny bit. But I want to make sure that this is together, because if I have parts that aren't together and they go in with the liquids, I'm going to have to stir more to disperse, incorporate, and make a cohesive batter. Meanwhile, we have our liquids, which we need to emulsify. I watched a video the other day of a woman talking about refrigerating cookies, and she kept saying that the cookies go in the refrigerator to emulsify, and they don't. They go in the refrigerator to hydrate. Emulsification is when you take 2 things that don't like each other and you force them to be together, like water and oil. And a weak emulsion, like water and oil, you shake it up and it separates the second you stop. A strong emulsion, you will hold. It won't separate. And sometimes we need to use liaisons or things that make them go together. And inside our egg yolk is lecithin. Lecithin attracts water and fat and makes it go together. So what we want to do is create an emulsion with the liquids, and then we want to add them to the Dries without breaking the emulsion, and then we're going to finish with these really heavy ingredients that weigh things down. So anyway, I'm always, when I'm working, moving my bowl around, and I'm holding the whisk on the bottom of the bowl. I'm not lifting it, and I'm using just this. Okay, so then here's what I do. I'm going to put this here because I don't know if I'll need it. So I have a parchment. This is a half sheet parchment. I'm going to use 1 bowl. I'm not going to get too dirty. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to put it onto this parchment. And if you've watched my videos, you know that I use this parchment to lift my Dries, just like this. This is how I lift it to move it out of the way, and then I use it to add them to my liquids. So now I have the same bowl, and I'm going to add my liquids. And it doesn't matter what order you add your ingredients. So if you don't have the recipe, it's on the link tree, and I have them, together. So the Dries are all right there, and that includes the sucrose, desiccated coconut, the flour, the baking soda, the cinnamon, the salt. Those are all my Dries. Your Dries are always not the same. So when we look at a recipe, every recipe operates differently. So that's why when I talk about ingredient function, it's not how does sucrose act or how does flour act. How does it act in connection to the ingredients that it lives within the bowl. So that's what we're talking about. So I have buttermilk, I have whole egg, I have a neutral oil, which in this case is sunflower oil, and I'm going to put my labels over here. All right, so let me take off the lids to my fat, my dairy, my liquid flavor, and my eggs, okay? And when I talk about what lives inside of an ingredient, I want you to think about every ingredient. Eggs. Water lives inside of the egg white. Protein lives in the egg white. Fat and lecithin lives in the yolk. And I am going to take my spatula, oops, get everything out of here. That's my egg, my fat. Now I could use a whisk, but I'm just going to use the spatula to stir these up. Got my beautiful extract, which is liquidy. You want to get rid of some liquid. You're ever wondering, should I use extract versus vanilla bean paste? The difference is moisture. Remember I talked about time, temperature, and moisture? All these things are room temperature, and these are my wets. So they're just mixing, and you can see the oil is completely separated. So I'm just going to mix them together. I'm going to go ahead and get these guys ready, even though I don't need them yet. The other thing I'm going to get ready, and when I say get ready is because it's not go time yet, remember? Go time is when I add the flour to the wet. This is high moisture, right? Cookies don't have this much moisture in them, and not all cakes do. Some cakes, the moisture is locked in the whipped egg. But in this case, we have a lot of moisture. We have a quick bread. Basically, quick bread is taking the wets and mixing with the dries. That's the basic foundational concept, okay? So here is my adorable little quarter sheet tray, and this is what they call a cake frame. And you can get these from Crown Cookware, and this is sturdy, and it's welded, and I love it. This is the direction, even though it has these here, these little corners, yes, they do allow some of the batter to go through, but not enough that this doesn't work. So I have a little quarter sheet tray that I got at Restaurant Depot, and I like buying them in person because then you can look and see if they're dinged. You can pick them up and see if you like the weight, because if they're too lightweight, they're going to warp eventually. Then I put a parchment down, not a silicone baking mat, because I want the heat to go through. I need good heat because I have heavy ingredients. I have one leavener, baking soda, chemical leavener. I need the oomph, and the oomph is coming from the acidic reaction, acid in the pineapple, the buttermilk, and the heat. So here we go. This is going to go on here, and it just fits on like that. I just think it's adorable. And then I'm going to take my Pam spray, which is a baking spray, and you don't need to do the parchment, but you need to do the corners and get the sides, just little pulses, okay? So then I put that there. So that's ready. And again, go time, you don't have time to go back and do a ton of stuff. This has low bench tolerance. So if I didn't do that, if I didn't do a bunch of other things, then this baking soda is going to be activating all of the juice, like the chemical reaction, the leavener, which is CO2, which is going to fill up all the bubbles and create our crumb. They're already happening, and you're losing it because they're not in the oven. So that's why you really need to take the time to gather your ingredients, gather your tools, and do a good job of having everything ready. And if you don't, just think about it, because next time you want to be better prepared. And if you work like I do every single time, it's not that you don't make mistakes, because you will. I did not scale the flour. It doesn't matter. I did just now, and it's no harm, no foul. But if I'd forgotten it, if I had not noticed it or didn't have a system, this dry would look, I'd be like, okay, well, that's weird. There's not much. Like, I would make a mistake. So make mistakes is not the problem. It's that you catch them and you remedy them. So my carrots, I am going to show you that this deli cup needs to go, though the lid, and you buy the lid separately. This is how I know. When they crack like this, then I rinse and recycle it. So that's gonna go. I'm not gonna work with that anymore. Okay, I'm gonna stir this, and you can put all your dries in at once or in twos. Because I have inclusions, And inclusions could include other than the carrot and the pineapple. And a lot of times people put the coconut in with these, but I recommend adding it with the Dries because you really need it to be absorbing the moisture from right away and have it dispersed with the Dries. And the sucrose as well. The sucrose needs to start dissolving. We're not creaming anything, so we need to have it start dissolving. So having it dispersed with the Dries is the best way to get everything kind of down the road, right? Dispersed, together. And then if you had other add-ins, they would be these things. Finely chopped, a nice chop on a nut that's been toasted. Don't put raw nuts into a carrot cake. If a carrot cake is this thick, they will never toast. They'll just go in raw, they'll come out tasting raw. They won't be good. You have to knock out a little bit of the oil and open up and release some of the volatile compounds so that the toasted nuts taste good. And you can use any, but you can use walnuts or pecans. I chose not to. If you use raisins, you must hydrate the raisins because if you put raisins into this mixture, it's going to take water away from the other ingredients. And the sugar is going to take the water before the flour gets it, and the raisins are going to take the water, and you're going to end up with a cake that doesn't taste good. So if you add something, you need to treat all those add-ins very specifically. What I'm going to do, because I have to add these, if I added my flours, my Dries into, and then added this, I think that that would be overworking. So what I'm going to do is stir this up, get it moving, and then I'm going to take my Dries, just like this, and I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to take my spatula and properly fold, but I'm going to stop folding short of incorporation, and then I'm going to add my carrot and my pineapple. Now I slice straight, pull, and turn the bowl, okay? You don't want to narrow, tight, you don't want to be flipping this around. You want to very quickly just go around the edge, lift, turn, okay? So there's dry. You can see dry bits. So what I'm going to do is just go around, and then I'm going to dump these in here. Get this in as fast as I can. I'm going to stir these. So if you continue to stir and you continue to fold, you're going to overwork your Dries. That's how it works. That's why you need to be thinking and paying attention. Go time means that until you combine those Dries to your wets, you can take a phone call, you can have conversation, you can be goofing around, but the second it's go time, you need to pay attention. And what I'm looking for is that my carrots are not clumped and everything is evenly distributed. Okay? I think it looks beautiful, so pretty. Okay? And I'm going to take this guy, this is adorable, and I'm going to pour my batter in here. And it's going to go straight in the oven. And you need to be moving quickly because this is going to start to interact with the baking soda. And so you need to get it in the oven. And I don't need to move it around a ton, and you do not push batter up the sides, and it sticks, and that's why it burns and gets done. You push it toward the edges and then into the oven right away. I'm gonna go put this in the oven. And when I baked it earlier, I baked it a lot thinner. So I have a long-standing habit of putting everything at 20 minutes. I'll check it at 20 minutes and we'll see how it's doing. All right, so next I'm going to be doing the cream cheese icing. So this is where I just go through and pull all my stickers. Okay, all of my dirty dishes are in a bin, and then I clean up the countertop, and I'm ready for the next step. This white countertop gets very scuffed, so I use a magic eraser to get the black scuffs up. You can add nuts. They are on the recipe at 38%. So it's 90 grams for this particular batch, and it's walnuts, but you just want to chop them to a nice piece. So when you slice the cake, it should look pretty. They should be small enough on the tooth that it makes sense with the texture of the cake, and they should be toasted before they go into your batter. Toasting them refreshes the oil. It can dry them out a tiny bit. And if you want, you can take them to darkness because they're not going to do a lot in the batter. They're not going to bake a lot. They're basically inert. So you can add more flavor by actually bringing a little bit of color to them, but I just don't want nuts in my carrot cake. But a lot of people like them. I've done little like raise your hand, what does people like, and it's like 50-50. It's not a hummingbird cake, but it could be. It's a quick bread. So hummingbird cake is a good example. Zucchini bread, hummingbird, banana, and carrot cakes are all quick breads. And the reason I'm a big fan of it is because if you don't have a mixer, if you have a coffee shop or a small business where you're trying to have more things that you can add to the menu that are easy, you can freeze them once they're baked straight into the freezer. I'll show you the cake that's frozen. But for this one, you need it to be tender because a cake is not meant to be chewy like bread. It's meant, for your teeth to go through more tenderly. And so if you create more gluten structure, you're going to get chewiness. And if you want to do almond extract instead of vanilla, you can, but you're going to be changing the flavor. And I think the balance of the tangy, creamy cream cheese icing with the butter in it and this cinnamon-based carrot cake, because this is not a spice. There's no other spices in here, just cinnamon and vanilla, which I love. Yeah, I don't want cardamom in my carrot cake, but it's very common. I don't like a spice cake. I like this sweet cake. This cake is different, and it is the pineapple and the carrots and all. It makes it into a sweet snack cake. I just love it. So the advantage of the tin that I showed you, it's called a cake collar, and it gives you square sides, and it also allows you to make the cake thick. When a sheet pan, you can't. It'll fall off the edges, right? If you have a specific pan that has, a 2-inch or 3-inch side and it's square edges and you can get it out easily. But in the bake shop, you're gonna have sheet pans. You're not gonna have a ton of different pans. You're not gonna have all these options. So what they try to do is make it easy, and so you have cake extenders. And so that allows you to throw that into a sheet pan and have square edges and get depth. And that's what I was using. All right, so now I'm going to do the icing. Okay, this is a simple carrot cake cream cheese icing. So when I show you this recipe, it is very specific. This recipe is very moist and it is stackable, but I like stacking a sheet of it or a quarter sheet of it, and you can definitely put it into a pan. But if you get really, really tall, it's gonna be too moist to be able to hold like this. And the other thing is it's designed to be served cold. And so this icing, while I have other recipes that you can use if you want to use cream cheese icing to stack, this icing, if you use too much or if it's not cold, will bulge between the layers. This icing is meant to be the perfect texture for this cake out of the refrigerator. So that's something you need to think about. I never say this, you'll never hear me say this is the best recipe. It's the best recipe for the job or for the desired outcome. So that's why I like it. So this is a 25% recipe, and if you found this and you want to double this column, you have a half sheet. If you go 100%, you'll have a full sheet pan. So I took this same amount, and I'm going to show you the cake that I made, and I did it in a half sheet. It's just thinner. Everything I do is to make everything simpler and to help guide the way and build a system, because I do it the same way every time. I never stray, and it just makes life a lot easier. All right, so let me grab my mixer. For cream cheese icing, you really do need a mixer. You can use a hand mixer, but I'm using a paddle and a stand-up mixer, and I'm using butter, cream cheese, 10X, which is powdered sugar, and salt and vanilla. I think that's what's in this recipe. And the ratios change depending on how stiff you want your icing to be. But cream cheese is soft and it has a high water content. The other day, it's warm here and it's humid, and I put my cream cheese in the deli cups after I scaled them, and the water came out. So there's like that much water at the bottom. The butter, when you mix it on the mixer, is going to emulsify with the cream cheese and the 10X, which has cornstarch in it, and it's going to hold that water and give you more stability so that you don't put it on your cake and then you put it out and an hour later water's weeping out of it. That should not happen with this icing. All right, let me get the ingredients here. I mean, these recipes could not be any easier. It's wonderful. So if you need the recipe, it's on the link tree, and we're working off of this column because this was a giant batch. I mean, the original batch is like 1,816 grams of just 10x. So I brought that down to 544. And if you're learning the metrics, just remember 454 approximately is a pound. And if you make a habit of going to the store and looking at the boxes and the bags of your ingredients, it always has the grams. Begin to read them and start to formulate a physical representation of what those numbers look like. Because we all know what a pound is, but if we can learn what 272 grams of butter is, it helps. Like, I know that I needed a full deli, because if I had a medium, this wouldn't have fit. So my ingredients for this cream cheese icing are 272 of butter, it's right here, room temperature, 1.8 grams of sea salt, 544.8, so I round up to 545 of cream cheese. Boom. I have vanilla extract at 3 grams. That's 1% of the whole recipe, which is average. If you want to go up, you can. And then 545 grams of 10x. This is powdered sugar. I call it 10x as a habit because in commercial kitchens, you often have 30 different kinds of sugar, and 10x is what you get at the grocery store. It's been milled 10 times. It's very powdery, fine, and it has 3 to 5% cornstarch. And you know cornstarch, when you use it to make gravy, thickens things. When things thicken, that means it's holding on to that water, and that's what it's going to do in our cream cheese icing. Now I have a Toba Garrett cream cheese icing, and it's on the link tree. It has Sweetex, which is an emulsified shortening. That's the kind of cream cheese icing you need if you are doing a wedding cake or celebration cake, or if you live in a hot, humid environment. Because these two things, butter and cream cheese, don't like the heat and the humidity, and they're not going to give you a lot of support, but shortening will. And Toba Garrett's really smart, and she balances it. You don't even notice it, but you get performance, which is the big difference. All right, let me see how many minutes are left. We have 7.5. What I do is I keep a parchment because I'm going to be sifting my 10x. I like to get the lumps out. With humidity, it's going to be lumpy. So this is my cream cheese. I'm going to put my things here, and I'm going to get my fats, which are my butter and my cream cheese, into my bowl, and I'm going to start to paddle them on low. Everything we do is to get all these things together. So we do it in little increments. If you just throw everything in the bowl, that's not going to work. I cringe when I watch people who do baking content and they just throw they say, you just throw it all in. They'll make a meringue and they'll just throw the sugar on top. I just cringe. This is not how the ingredients work. And I will tell you, my main philosophy is, you can tell the ingredients anything you want, but they're not going to listen. You have to do what the ingredients want. They don't care if it's cold in your kitchen or if you're in a hurry or you forgot something. They don't care. They're going to ingredient. Ingredient's going to ingredient. So you can't do things to them they don't want done. They will show you who's the boss. So I'm just going to turn that on low and just get it going. Here's my salt, my vanilla, get these all ready. I just like to get everything ready. And you'll see often that I move things around. I do that because this tells me what goes in next, and it's just a way of me keeping track. Okay, so I have right here, this is my Tammy. It's a little bigger than normal. It's actually bigger than my half sheet parchment. I'm going to sift this is my 10x. 10x is sugar, and it loves to grab moisture from the air, especially when it's humid. So right now, it's very lumpy. So I'm going to take a dry spatula in case I have lumps. Now, if you look at this, everything is sticking to the middle. Everything's sticking to the center. This is what it looks like in here. You can tell it's getting light and soft. That's light and soft and wonderful. Okay, but then if I start scraping at the paddle, it's firm and all in the original texture as when I put it in. So it's good to scrape. And I edit out a lot of the scraping in my videos so you don't see the work, but it is there. Okay, so at this point I'm going to add the salt and the vanilla to get it going again. Little by little, we want everybody to get along in the bowl. So little by little, and I just keep this because I put my spatula on there and it keeps my table clean. And I'm just going to keep it on low. You can, when you're making icing, if you keep things on low, it babysits for you. This icing should not crust up like American buttercream. So if I walk away, it shouldn't get a crust on it. But let's say I am doing an American buttercream. One way to keep it from crusting up is to keep it on low, and then you can leave it. All right, so I'm going to try to not make a mess. But if I do, I can use my King Arthur little plastic bench scrapers I love so much. Yeah, it's making a little bit of a mess. Usually I use a smaller tammy or a larger parchment, but I didn't. So this has lumps. So I'm going to take my spatula and just get these out of here. And the reason I don't use my hands is habit. The more you touch your food, the more likely you are to work messy and work in not a good, clean, well-practiced way. It's just habit, and all the good habits, if you keep doing them, build into a good product. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 of these. I know that this is my timer's going to go off in 3 minutes, so I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm going to show you what's going on in the oven. Now this is already soft. Our butter is going to get firmer than the cream cheese. So the balancing of the two, and I think it's 50% butter to cream cheese. So you have 100% cream cheese and 50% of the butter, and that's just going to help stabilize it. And it's warm here finally. I'm going to show you how smooth this is getting, and it's going to go like this, okay? That means that I need to be careful that I don't over aerate this. The more you aerate buttercream or cream cheese icing, the softer it's going to get. You have more air cells, so they're going to be like that. So I'm going to go ahead and use this guy to put some in here and get, oops, powder. I used to sift 50-pound bags for one job that I had. It was just such a mess. All right. So you can toggle just like this, so it doesn't ploop all over the place. And I'm just watching it, and I need to fit all this 10X in here. And just so you know, what's really nice about understanding what things weigh, what you're using, what's going in the bowl, if you have a 4.5 quart mixer like I do, in general, you want your recipes to be a little under 5 pounds. That is what will fit in. And some recipes are fluffier than others. So this 10X is so light and fluffy and smooth. And it's also forgiving. If I don't get it all in here, it's not going to change the texture that much. Okay. So I will clean up the counter, but I'm going to get this in like this. 58 seconds on the clock. All right, so now I'm going to clean up the 10X that I dropped. There's even some on the wall. So there's powdered sugar all along the edge, so I am going to scrape and make sure that the bottom looks good. If you have lumps, it means that you did not take the time to incorporate the fats before you added more product. That's what I mean about if you dump everything in, you're going to end up with lumps. And I don't care how soft you make it, you heat up the icing, you're not going to get rid of the lumps because you skipped a step. So what you want to do is take your fats, get them in the bowl, make sure that your fats have been incorporated on low, have no lumps, and then you start adding your other ingredients, and then you won't have lumps. Because when you have good, you stay good. You have bad and you add more, you're just adding good after bad. All right, so let me take you guys to look at the cake. And I'm not going to run this. It's not going to get a crust. I don't want to over aerate it. I just rather wait. So let's all go together. I know I'm not going to have to open this. Can you see? I'm going to show you what's going on in here because I'm not going to open the oven. I'm not going to open because I don't want to let out the steam, but can you see that it's starting to rise up the edge? And there are bubbles in the center and it's still wet, but it hasn't taken on any color. So I am going to set my timer for, I'm gonna give it 10 minutes. Now this is pretty thick, and that's different than some cakes. So it's definitely something to take into consideration. I'm gonna show you a cake I already did yesterday, and I'm going to cut it. So I'm gonna run this, pull up my ingredients, and I think this is good. Looks smooth. I'm just gonna give it one more, but do you notice how I didn't turn it up? I'm not whipping it. It's already very soft. Oops, let me turn the camera, sorry. And I'll bring the bowl over, but look, this is how soft it is. Now it's going to firm up in the bowl as it sits, but right now it's pretty soft. So I'm gonna scrape and just take a look and feel with the bottom of the bowl, make sure I don't have any dried ingredients anywhere. And then I'm gonna run it just a second, and then I'll show it to you, and it's done. And then I'm gonna pull, let me turn on the thing here. I'm gonna show you how to cut a frozen cake really, really pretty. Okay, so that's it. This is done. Now I'm gonna move my mixer out of the way and make way to cut a frozen cake into some beautiful squares. You can cut carrot cake any way, but I like 2 layers where you have a little bit thicker on the top than in the middle. So let's say you have, if you have 100%, you have 40% in the middle and 60% on the top. And then you cut it into squares and present it on a plate. It just looks really, really pretty. So you can cover this with plastic to protect it. You could transfer it and then put it in the refrigerator, but this is how soft it is. Okay, so this would be very challenging to build a really tall cake. Now again, we can refrigerate it, but there's a limit to it. So I just want you to understand what that means. Doesn't mean the recipe's bad. It means that is what this recipe does. Now here's why I've gained 10 pounds, because this, like, I don't want to throw this away. This is what I want to eat, and I do this all the time, and this starts to add up. The cake does not smell yet. It doesn't, and that is a first indicator of it being done, and it does not. So maybe I will eat just a little bit. All right, yep. Well, somebody has to taste it, right? Let me unplug it and wash my hands. And I wipe my machine down really well at the end of all these. Before I put everything away, I go, and I really do a good job. And I've taken this thing apart a couple times to kind of clean, but I got scared because these things are built like amazingly tight. All right, getting a cutting board. So here's my cutting board I'm gonna use to cut my frozen carrot cake. If you serve this cake and it is, you pull it out of the refrigerator and you've baked it in a couple of 9-inch or 8-inch pans, that's fine. But if you wanna serve it, I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. And I am heating up some water so that I can heat up my knives. So there's my icing. I'm gonna put it over here. This is my IKEA trivet. I'm gonna put the hot water right here. And I have 2 knives. You want a chef's knife when bakery is frozen, but you want a serrated knife when you're cutting it cold. When you're cutting it to serve it and it's just cold or room temperature, you're preserving the crumb by sliding your serrated knife back and forth. When you use this on bakery that's room temperature, you're just crushing it. I've been adding air cells and air, and so this just is gonna drag it down, but when it's frozen, this is your friend. So I'm gonna take 2, I'm gonna put them in the hot pot in the water, and when I pull one out to cut, dry it off, cut, I'll put it back in, and while that's getting warm, when I'm ready to go again, the other one is hotter. So I kind of like using 2 knives. And I like trying to find a knife that is wider than the cake you're gonna cut. Because if you have to dig in and do a bunch, then you're not gonna get a really pretty cut. And then the other thing is I use a ruler. And this ruler you can sanitize and keep clean, so it's kind of nice. We don't have to get crazy, but we're gonna try to make it pretty. I need gloves. I'm gonna put it right here on this tray. So I'm gonna cut pieces and then put them on here. So I'm gonna go in the freezer here. About 4 minutes left on the oven. And this is the cake that I just made. I made it yesterday. and I froze it, and once it got frozen, I then wrapped it with a bag. And my freezer, this one does not work that great. It's a home freezer, and there's condensation, which is frustrating. Okay, so I put the cake that I made onto a parchment, and then I put another parchment on top after it froze before I put the bag on it. So I'm going to take this sheet pan away. This is ice cold. And I can either leave the cake on the parchment, which makes it easy to pull off, but what I do want to do, I'm not going to cut it until I pull the parchment, so that once I cut it, I don't have parchment stuck. So I want to pull it off, but I'm going to leave it on there. And then I'm going to pull the top off, okay? It's not fancy, but it works. There's a couple things you can do. So this isn't as frozen as it would be if it were in a commercial freezer. But you see how the edge is ugly? I'm not concerned about the edge. So what I'm going to do, and it's not going to get wasted because I'm going to put the edges or the scraps into a deli cup, but I'm going to cut off those edges to create a clean edge, and then I'm going to measure. So if I can get a baseline of what this size is, and I like using the centimeters, a little more accurate. So it's 20 wide, which is good to know, and then 29. So I'm going to cut some off and then remeasure it. So I need the hot water, and I need a dry towel to wipe off the knife. So let me go get in there. Let me show you guys, let's see. This isn't boiling, but it should be hot enough. Let's go look at the cake. So let me show you what's in here. See that? You can tell it's firming up a bit. It's still wet, but it's definitely getting more solid. So I have 1 minute left, so that's 30 minutes total. These things can take 45 minutes. I'm gonna add 8 minutes to the time. I'm gonna show you what I have going here. I'm gonna put the hot pot right here. Right here. Now what I wanna tell you is normally I would have an induction burner with the water going, but this is not induction ready. So I'm gonna put the knives in like that. Okay. So I'm gonna pull this out, dry it off, and I am going to cut the end of this cake off. And when you do this, isn't that pretty? I'm going to put this into a deli cup. This I can eat later. Perfectly good. All right, so this is what it looks like. Now this is going to go into my hot pan. The next one's in line. So this is what it looks like. And it's not super tall. This I made too big. That's why I'm making a smaller guy. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the other side. This knife's even longer. When you cut, you have to look at the knife from the top. Not only are you cutting this way, but you're also cutting this way or this way. So you need to get it straight as well. All right. So this is going into the pot. And these are very hot. So I don't need to have them any hotter. So I'm going to turn this. I'm going to pull this knife out. It's been sitting in there for a second. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut this guy in half to make it more manageable. I'll show you what I mean to make it manageable. Okay. They don't look perfect. All right, so what I want to do now is pull this off. And I have something that now I can clean up on this side. I'm going to move that there. I'm going to cut right through the paper. So now I can cut these ends off much easier. Okay, so the next knife has been getting hot. I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to put it in there, and my rule is to not ever do 2 swipes. It's a hard and fast rule because you will get a messy look. Okay, into the pan. So I'm going to look at this from above. Looks pretty square. But if I were working, I would be using that ruler to make tick marks and to be very fastidious, because that's your job when you're working in a nice restaurant, is to perhaps cut in a 7 by 3 centimeter rectangle of cake that's going to look beautiful on the plate. So if you're looking for a way to set your products apart, it can come down to picking a beautiful size and cutting it really beautifully. All right, that's it. Here's one piece. And so the edges are really nice, okay? And at this point, if you want, you can look at it and see if you did a good job cutting the edges. And mine are a little slanted. I'm going to do 3-inch squares. And I might have some odd parts left over. So I'm going to mark 3. And 3. And I'm going to take the other knife. And I'm not going to do all of these right now. I'm showing you so you know. And this is going to go right through. Move it over. Get the other knife. And these get hot. That's why if you have them on the heat, you need to be mindful. You could hurt your knives and yourself. The knives do get hot. Okay. So this piece, I think, looks pretty. Let me grab a plate. So if you wanted to plate this, you could offset it or put it right in the center of your plate and then build around it. It's just a simple piece of cake, but cutting it like that is a game changer. So I'm just going to put that plate over there, and then I'm going to cut these into 3-inch squares and show you what I mean. All right, dry it off. Actually, I'll do 2.5 by 3. And then I'm going to take this piece and put it on the parchment. So 2.5. I love this kitchen. I don't want to lose it, but we're getting kicked out. This is my system, and this is what they do in professional kitchens, and it works. So then what you do is you take this, and I could actually fit 3 across, put it back in the freezer, and then you place them very close together like this. They don't need to be touching. And then you get them back in the freezer. They're still frozen. And then you put parchment on the top, and you wrap the whole thing in a bun bag or in plastic, and what you have are pieces that you can pull out, put into the cooler on a plate or the whole tray, bring the frozen product down to a cooler temperature, and then serve it straight from. So I'm going to put this just back in the freezer. I'm going to go look at the cake. So this is how I cut my carrot cake, and it's how I store it. And this way, if you came to my house, I could pull these from the freezer, put them in the refrigerator, and within a few short 20 minutes, maybe 30, they'd be ready to eat. Okay, and I'm gonna plate up. Let me show you. I know Dave is gonna want some of these. I'm gonna take this guy, put it right in the center of the plate. Okay, I just think it looks pretty. So we'll come back to this. I'm going to throw this without plastic into my freezer because I don't want to smash the cake or the frosting, but I definitely need to get it back into the freezer. So this is going to go in the freezer. There you go. I mean, it could not be easier. I'm going to show you what's going on with the cake. So that's in the freezer. Okay, and then let's go look. Let's turn this guy off. We'll look before I open. So here we go. I'm going to open it up. It's getting darker, but I need to touch it. It's still a little soggy. I don't know if you saw that, but when you press it, it comes back, but not quickly enough. We want some of the sheen to dissipate. I'm actually gonna give it 5 more minutes. And I know this recipe pretty well, so I'm not nervous. I'm not gonna overdo it. And one of the things with this cake is you really do want to caramelize what's in there, the sugars and the proteins. And they exist in a lot of our ingredients, the sugar, the flour, the carrots. All right. So then this is what you can eat and your family can eat, and then the rest is in the freezer waiting to be plated. And so this is in production, how it's done. And I don't see why you can't do it in your house. It's really good. And I can shove it in here. Shove it in there like that. And then put a lid on it. Look at that. That just goes in the fridge, and then we can eat it later with a fork. I'm gonna move this away too. No, I'm gonna leave it here because it looks really pretty. But I am gonna move this hot thing of water. I don't wanna hurt myself. And so at this point, I am gonna cover up my frosting. I don't want anything getting in it, and I don't want it drying out. Okay, but I am going to move this hot pot, and I'm going to take my knives out of here because the heat is not good for your knives. And a lot of people use torches on their knives when they cut things. I think that's great, but it will ruin your knife, so you want to dedicate a knife to that job. These are my IKEA corks. I use them for everything. Clean up a little bit here. That's it. Could not be any easier. The cake is looking great. Got my beautiful carrot cake here. Look how pretty it looks. Okay, so you can cut these any size. I think the top should be taller, but again, I made it in a half sheet. So if you take the exact recipe I shared and you bake it in a half sheet, it's gonna be thinner. You take that little quarter sheet tray, you slice it in half, fill it, flip the one side on the top, put more on top, and then you have a really tall, beautiful, lovely cake. But can you see, maybe I'll get a fork. What we have is nice bubbles. We have color. If I had nuts in there, you would be able to see the nuts. So you can see the coconut. That's a pineapple right there. See the white thing? And I like it cold, but you don't have to. Once this warms up, it's going to be even softer. So that's pineapple. If you add raisins or you add nuts, you're going to be adding interest. But you can see that there's a little darkness. That's the crumb. You do not want to underbake this cake. You want it to pull some color because it's very moist. The difference between a good carrot cake and a bad, especially if you have high moisture, and this is a high moisture cake in general, even for carrot cakes, is that if you don't properly bake it, and that's why I talk about properly baking, it's darker than most people imagine. And you have to imagine if that dark little, that's the crust. If it weren't there, when I pulled the cake out, all that moisture that's in there that was being released is now going to get reabsorbed. So now the starches are gummy and they're chewy and they don't taste good. So when you bake something properly and the exterior gets nice and dark, first of all, you've increased flavor because dark is where the flavor lives. But second of all, you've evaporated and dissipated the moisture. In baking, cooling is a baking stage, just like scaling, mixing, baking. These are all stages. So is cooling, because if you leave it in the pan, if you don't cool it properly, that moisture is going to get reabsorbed and you're going to have a gummy, yucky carrot cake. So all of these things in baking lead up to a good finished product. And unlike cooking, you can't go back and fix this stuff. That's why it's important to learn just some of the basic fundamentals. And the most basic is don't move forward unless you know that the stage you're at is good, or you're just throwing good after bad. That's where I have my cooling racks. This might be coming out. So I'm going to go check, and I'm going to have you guys help me. Anyway, so let's see what's going on here. So I know it's very dark. Okay. It has, it's still very soft. It's hot. So let's bring it here. And the first thing I'm going to do is put it on the cooling rack. And I always recommend that you have 2 mitts at all times. Just when you think you don't need a mitt, you need a mitt. Okay. I'm going to move these over here, and I am going to pull this cooling rack up here because I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. This cake collar comes right off. Right off. It's just the best. It's really well engineered. And then I'm going to take this cake, which, ooh, it's hot. So that is how dark it is. And I'm happy with that. And the inside's gonna be really bright orange. You know what, I'm just gonna put this on my IKEA rack over here by the door because look, it's gonna cool way faster than if it's on the countertop. One way to cool things quickly is if you do put things on here, find the coldest place you have. It could be I have stainless steel tables, and just keep moving it around. That'll help cool it down quickly. In a minute, I'm going to take it out of the pan, but quite frankly, you can cool it in the pan. You could wrap it after it's 100% cool and freeze it. So you can do this cake and freeze it like it is, or you can fill it like I did, or you can cut them like I did, and then put these pieces very close together but not touching, and then you can reach in and grab one at a time. So if you're having a party and you have all of these cut, it's really fascinating. The things that I share with you are the professional way of doing things that are fascinating because they make life easier, not harder. Is there a difference in taste between frozen cake and a fresh cake? I don't think there is. As soon as that's frozen enough for me to throw a parchment on top and rebag it, I'm going to. So even though it's in the freezer, maximum 3 months for flavor, texture, quality. So I say 3 months or less. If you're using a home freezer like I am, freezer and fridge is one. So anything that you have in there that stinks is gonna make this stink. So if you have garlic or onion, anything, this is a sponge. This is a dedicated refrigerator. It only has bakery stuff in it. But when you have savory flavors, your stuff will, no matter how you wrap it, it will absorb those flavors. So that's one thing to think about. That's why in commercial kitchens, oftentimes the freezers are separate. Also, this home fridge freezer is all like condensing and it can't keep up with the humidity. But I have another small freezer that I keep certain things in that freezes like a gem. So not every freezer is the same. So my answer is always analyze the situation, look at what you have going on, and then adjust. Turn off the oven, that's what you need to do. So yes, it can go in the freezer, but you want to make sure to take care at every step. And no matter what you're doing in the freezer, you don't want to take it out of the freezer and put it on the countertop. You need to go from freezer to fridge to counter. That's the rule. Yes, I can ship it, just like it's gonna get there in a mush though. You know what's so great? I'm not trying to be cheesy, but what we're doing here right now is like you can make this cake and you can make it and then eat it, and everyone who's doing the same thing, like we're all having the same experience. And if you ask me, that's pretty rare these days. Yeah, I want you to become a baker. This is not a hard thing to bake, but it's flat. So what I'm gonna do with this cake is take it out of here. It has a parchment on the bottom. I'm gonna cut it down the middle with a serrated knife. And then I'm going to fill icing. I'm gonna take this side, put it on the top, and then put more on there, and then I'm gonna slice it like I did. So let's see how this cuts. Very soft. It's really good. So good. It's very, very good. This is just an excellent recipe. Oh, here we go. Oh my gosh, the Madeleine won. So next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing a Madeleine recipe. That recipe will go up on my Linktree, and I will be doing an ingredient chart for it as well. So here's the carrot cake we made today. Look how soft the frosting is. It's been out of the refrigerator a little while. It's just really good. All right, so here's the great thing about baking it on a sheet tray like this. The parchment's right here. So when I lift it up, the parchment's assisting me, and I can get my, I can get my hand underneath there. So it's too warm for me to stack it, but I'm going to slice it in half with a serrated knife. I'm gonna take my cream cheese icing, take the other half, put it on, and then I'll slice it up and end up with slices like this I can send to work with Dave. But this is what it looks like. It's very warm, it's cracking. It's very bouncy and lovely, and it's going to I'm gonna put it back on the rack to cool because it will re-solidify as it cools down. It will go from being soft to being firm, and it will kind of come together. If you were to attempt the carrot cake, I think you would do a very good job. I don't want people to think that what I do is advanced. What I do is actually foundational. It's just basic, and every concept builds on the next. Thank you everybody for joining me. I don't even know how many people came, and I'm not really into the numbers because all of you I'm just glad to have here. We're all doing such a good job of connecting and learning. I just love it. Dave, thanks for moderating. We appreciate it. And there's some carrot cake over here for you. All right, I'll see you all next week, but I'll see you all on TikTok, and I love your comments and questions, and I love hearing from you. All right, everybody, I'm gonna say goodbye. You know I hate goodbyes. All right, see you next Wednesday. All right, I'm gonna do it. See you guys next week. Take care. Bye. Happy baking.